quite frankly, the whole thing's just a big distraction for the country. And you look at, what Russia did, buying some Facebook ads to try to sow dissent and do it, and it's a terrible thing. But I think the investigations and all of the speculation that's happened for the last 2 years has had a much harsher impact on our democracy than a couple of Facebook ads.
Couple of Facebook ads. First, President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, claimed there was nothing wrong with accepting help from the Russians. That was in his appearances on the Sunday shows this weekend. Now, that was from today. That was Jared Kushner. He's Donald Trump's son-in-law and a senior advisor in this White House. And that was him downplaying Russia's attack on our democracy, describing it as, quote, just a couple Facebook ads. This new White House line coming days after Robert Mueller's report revealed in breathtaking detail the scope and the extent of the years-long Russian assault, which the report describes like this, quote, the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election in sweeping and systematic fashion, adding by the end of the 2016 U.S. election, Russia's disinformation organization had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. According to the report, as part of its effort, Russia hacked dozens of computers and stole hundreds of gigabytes of data from Democrats. The report is also careful to point out that though Mueller didn't establish a criminal conspiracy, Russia and the Trump campaign shared a common goal, and the special counsel investigation uncovered at least 19 Trump aides who had contact with Russians, including Jared Kushner, during the campaign. A whole lot more going on here, Jared, than a couple of Facebook ads. Joining our conversation, this is good. Jeremy Bash, former chief of staff at both the CIA and the Pentagon, former special presidential envoy for the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS. Brett McGurk making his 4 p.m. debut. We're so grateful. He served in the Bush and Obama and Trump administrations. Ambassador Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI, Frank Figliuzzi, all, this is an embarrassment of riches, wait for this, all MSNBC contributors. Let me start with you, Jeremy Bash. All the Russians did was buy a few Facebook ads. Your reaction?
Well, the reason why Jared has to minimize it is because he, of course, doesn't want to meet the opprobrium of his father-in-law. But it's really dangerous, Nicole, because, of course, if we take that approach, our defenses will be down. And it's fundamentally at odds with the consensus assessment of the intelligence community. We've seen it from the January 2017 assessment, as well as the testimony given as recently as this past January in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And the report, Nicole, that I was most, the part of the report, Nicole, that I was most interested in was actually about Mike Flynn, in which, as you know, Mike Flynn conducted this secret channel with the Russian foreign minister directly and the ambassador directly after the election. The report actually doesn't answer why did he do it? Why was he so eager to have that secret channel? Why did he lie to the vice president? Why did he lie to the FBI? And some of the answers to these questions we may not find out fundamentally until Mike Flynn is sentenced. But interestingly, the president directed the Deputy National Security Advisor, K.T. McFarland, to write a fake memo to lie to the file and basically say that never happened. She didn't do it.
Frank Figliuzzi, the other person who wanted to back channel to Russia was Jared Kushner. He wanted to back channel at the Russian embassy so that he could communicate as a transition official with the Russians without America hearing. Now, obviously, a criminal conspiracy was not charged by Robert Mueller, but the idea that all that went on between the Trump campaign and the Russians was, it seemed Jared was suggesting they coordinated on Facebook ads, which is news to me, but the idea that that's all that went on, it seems ridiculous to lie at this point. Why not embrace Mueller's findings on the Russians?
Yeah, if the Russian efforts to undermine our democracy during the election was just a couple of Facebook ads, then Hurricane Katrina was just a couple of raindrops. I mean, this was a deluge. This was an all-out effort. If you get into the weeds on this report, Nicole, you see the Russians were deep inside local, county, state election processes. They were into the hardware of voting machinery and technology and the companies that produce them. So the minimization of this by Jared is all based on fear. What's the fear? The fear is that somehow an acknowledgement of the report and the Russians' activities will delegitimize President Trump's election. And so he's got to say there's nothing to see here. Please move along. And it just keeps me going back to the question, Where is the original counterintelligence case that led to this special counsel inquiry? What's the status of it? What was the deal with the FBI agents embedded at the special counsel office for the sole purpose of passing intel back to FBI and the counterintelligence division? And I keep looking to the House and Senate Intelligence committees to get some answers on where we are with co-opting, recruiting, and the vulnerabilities of people within this administration.
Brett, there's a section of the report that I wanted to ask you about since I read it, and it's in the obstruction report, but it's around, I think the subhead there is Donald Trump's efforts to get his national security officials to say he wasn't under investigation in the Russia probe. And it's all about his interactions with then CIA Director Mike Pompeo, then head of the NSA Admiral Rogers, and DNI Coates. And it's chilling. And I'm guessing all my viewers have read all the words before, but for the 7 who haven't, I'll just explain it a little bit. What Trump does is he calls all these national security officials and asks them to basically function as mini Sarah Sandersers, or maybe Sean Spicer was still there, and say, no, he's not under investigation. In the report, they were all brought in as witnesses to Robert Mueller, which I want your thoughts on that. They have better things to do, but they were witnesses, and I'm sure they were happy to be. They all describe, or their aides describe, the president's conduct and the president's requests as some of the weirdest things they were asked to do. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that section from Mike Rogers, of course, I work with closely because Cyber Command was so integrated with our campaign against ISIS. Look, if you're in the executive branch, everybody works for the president. So you have to, I mean, that's rule number one. You're working for the president. If you don't understand that, you shouldn't be in the executive branch. At the same time, you swear an oath to the Constitution, not going to violate the law. And you also have your own personal integrity in carrying out your file. So that's really what is kind of throughout this report, but also it just the facts of what our country challenges, the challenges our country faces. I was just in China last week. Unanimous assessment of our intelligence community that Russia and China are working more closely together than at any time in the last 40 years. These are the kind of things that our country really has to pull itself together and have an agreement on the underlying facts. And when you have a unanimous intelligence assessment of a key fact like that, about a challenge that our country faces, and we're still arguing about just the basic fundamental assumptions, we're going to find ourselves in increasing trouble.
Well, Brett, let me press you on that because it happened today. Jared Kushner today said the entire Russian operation, if you will, was just a couple of Facebook ads. That is not the assessment of the individuals you just named.
Well, we have to look, the National Defense Strategy and the National Security Strategy, these are two documents that were approved by the president. They make the point that we are in an era of great power competition. And what that means is that our entire national security strategy is focused on winning this great power competition against Russia and China. So we have to look our competitors in the face and agree on the basic facts. And I think it's seriously problematic if senior officials are unable to do that.
Ambassador McFaul, let me read you this section that kept me up the night that I first stumbled upon it. I think it was Friday night. See, that's too much information about me. This is what I did Friday night. I read this from the report. On March 26, 2017, the president called NSA Director Admiral Michael Rogers. The president expressed frustration with the Russia investigation, saying that it made relations with the Russians difficult. The president also said that the news stories linking him with Russia were not true and asked Rogers if he could do anything to refute the stories. Deputy Director of the NSA, Richard Leggett, who was present for the call, said it was the most unusual thing he had experienced in 40 years of government service. After the call concluded, Leggett prepared a memo that he and Rogers signed documenting the content of the conversation and the president's request, and they placed the memorandum in a safe. This is out of, Tom Clancy novels where the president's calling to say this so I can do that with Russia, and they lock it in a safe. I mean, your thoughts reading through this section and all the other detailed reporting on contacts with Russians.
Well, that passage is absolutely kooky.
Right?
There's no other word for it. Kooky. Both that he would think to ask, but also it means he doesn't understand what the NSA does. I mean, he doesn't understand what the government that he's in charge of does. And he's the commander-in-chief. He's responsible for our national security, and he literally does not understand what the NSA does. That's what that passage meant to me. And I think that's a broader theme throughout the whole report. To your point about all these contacts with the Russians, number one, obviously Jared hasn't read the entire report like you have, Nicole, because it wasn't just a couple of Facebook ads.
Get a better Friday night, maybe.
Well, and in particular, you know, the GRU stealing information from Americans, publicizing it to help one candidate and not the other. And yet, you know, President Trump has denied that, and it sounds like that is the party line within the family. But there's just two things wrong with that. One, I just don't think they understand the nature of the Russian threat. I'm trying to be generous here, that they were just naive in having all these meetings and not understanding what the Russians were trying to do. By the way, the Russians hurt the legitimacy of their president and of his father-in-law, right? Think about, had there not been any Russian operation at all. We call those counterfactuals in academia. Think if they never done anything, and let's also presume that President Trump would have won without Russian help. He would be much better off today than without all of this Russian activity with them. That's number one. But number two, they are not treating Russia as a threat. That's wrong. Their national security strategy does. Most of the Trump administration also does, by the way. The President of the United States does not. And that, to me, is a huge mistake in terms of defending America's national interests.
Jeremy, let me give you the last word, and then everyone is staying put for more. Ambassador McFaul is being generous. Let me ask you to be blunt.
They knew exactly what they were doing. The Trump organization did this. They didn't care whether it was a threat. They wanted to win at all costs, and they wanted to make a hell of a lot of money.
But can I tell you what was so loathsome about what Jared did today?
Please.
He said that the report on the greatest attack against American democracy in our history was worse than the actual attack on our country. It is a profoundly unpatriotic thing to say. You might be able to say, look, we're getting involved in all kinds of things that are a bit of a distraction here. But again, as Mike said, as we all said, a hostile foreign power attacked the very sacred heart of our democracy. And he's saying an investigation into that was worse than the attack? No, that's a treasonous comment.
You agree?
I absolutely agree. I'm disgusted by the totality of his comments today, including when Jared Kushner said he advised MBS to be as transparent as possible, because he wouldn't discuss any, that whole debacle and attack on free speech and that horrible alliance. And so, no, I'm not surprised at all that Jared Kushner continues to deny that the Russians were actively involved in suppressing the vote in the United States.
Last word.
This is Jared Kushner's Helsinki moment. And the people patting themselves on the back right now are the Russian operatives that ultimately received polling data that Jared Kushner's father-in-law's campaign manager gave them, saying we are targeting 3 swing states to try to give Donald Trump the White House through the Electoral College, which, to our earlier point, is Exhibit A, why Jared Kushner shouldn't have a security clearance. He either knows that and doesn't care, or he's too foolish and naive to understand the gravity of the comment he made today.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.